Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido a Aikido Satori Podcast. Yo soy Roger Jafet y bueno, el día de hoy tenemos una entrevista bien interesante con un ex Aikidoka que decidió dejar el Aikido por estudiar MMA después de haber tenido una experiencia cercana. Puso a prueba su Aikido contra el arte marcial mixto y los resultados no fueron los que él esperaba, así que él cambia la perspectiva y el rumbo de su trayectoria marcial. Vamos a platicar con él, creo que es una charla bien interesante, podemos absorber un montón de cosas que nos pueden servir, que nos pueden dar perspectiva para entender un poquito más el arte marcial y entender un poquito de qué se trata realmente el Aikido. Me disculpo por mi inglés, es rudo todavía, es muy limitado, es muy difícil para mí todavía estructurar algunas frases. Mi pronunciación no es muy buena, así que me disculpo por ello. Y bueno, nos vemos terminando esta charla. Vamos para allá.
Let's do this.
Ok. Bueno, bienvenidos a todos, bienvenidos a Aikido Satori Podcast. El día de hoy es un día interesante, un día bueno, porque vamos a tener con nosotros a un artista marcial. Ya no puedo decir que es Aikidoka, es un artista marcial que empezó haciendo Aikido y ha transformado su camino a otro tipo de estilo de arte marcial. MMA es lo que él está practicando en este momento. Estoy hablando de, bueno, y también es youtuber. Esto es bien importante. He visto muchos videos de él haciendo ukemis, ushiro ukemis, haciendo técnicas de Aikido y son bastante buenos. Los he utilizado como referente para algunas cosas. So, welcome everyone to Aikido Satori podcast. Today it's a very special day. We have a martial artist. Before he was Aikidoka. I'm not sure if he still practice Aikido, but right now he practice. He changed. I talk about Rokas Leonavičius. Rokas, welcome.
Yes. Thank you for
Thank you
having
very
me.
much. Thank you,
Pleasure.
thank you. Rokas, I saw your channel years ago, and very interesting how you teach Aikido. Very interesting your type of Aikido. Very interesting how you teach in videos. I recommend a lot of my students to watch your videos of Ukemi and Ushiro Ukemi and the basics of techniques of Aikido. Then I not see more. Just 2 or 3 years I saw you was you experiment with MMA sparring.
Mm-hmm.
I think this video changed all your perspective of Aikido. Can you talk about this? What happened?
So first of all, thank you. I'm glad to hear you liked the initial videos. Well, I was running a professional Aikido school. That was my main source of income, full time. And I was very passionate about teaching Aikido, especially teaching it in a way where people would understand it. And I always did my best to be very honest about the Aikido that I taught. And already I was familiar with an idea that I did not consider Aikido to be a very effective form of self-defense already that day. And this could be argued, this could be debated. We can say it's just my opinion. And is the connection okay? Should I continue?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, come. So, but then when I started releasing Aikido YouTube videos, like tutorials, many people looked at them and said, "Oh, you're doing this wrong. You're doing this wrong, and you're placing your foot in the wrong way like this, and you're placing your hips in an angle not like this." And some of the comments, I could see the truth behind it, but I was also frustrated because I think a lot of it was what I used to experience a lot in Aikido, and at least in my own experience. There were almost these uh, Aikido style wars, where where each school thinks they do it the right way, and there would be a common thing to criticize other schools and to say, actually, your technique is wrong, our technique is right. I was frustrated about that because I considered that it doesn't matter that much, because for me, obviously I always could perfect my techniques and make them better. There's always space to grow. By no means was I perfect, but I I I was teaching Aikido not for my students to learn perfect technique. I was teaching them more for just become better people and for fitness and for their personal growth. So for me, the angles of the foot, it mattered, but not that much. And in the end, I was frustrated because I realized a lot of people think that Aikido would work even in an MMA cage. And I thought, you know what, I will use myself as an example, and I will prove and show on record that actually it's not true. That Aikido is a good is a nice martial art, it's a nice practice, but it's not developed to fight against an MMA fighter. And then whenever somebody would say, "Oh, you're placing this foot wrong," I would say, not that it doesn't matter that much. And so I made the video. I made the Aikido versus MMA video where I basically get my ass kicked by an MMA fighter trying to use Aikido and not being able to do that. And that led me to, initially I was expecting that, but also I saw so much confusion in the YouTube comments. Some people were praising the video, others were criticizing me that I failed as an Aikidoka. There were a lot of different discussions, and I realized that's an important subject which needs to be addressed. And that's when I started continuing making videos about that subject. So that's kind of the short version.
Yeah, and uh, little time after that, you close your Aikido dojo.
Yes, true.
And
Should I
what
tell about that?
happened? What happened? What your students? Well, what you say to your students? I can't imagine leave my students. Aikido is my life,
Right.
but it's most important. I teach you have to follow your dreams, and you need to follow your feelings.
Right.
So I'm not here to accuse you. Hey, why you did? I'm just ask how you talk with your students
Yeah.
and close your dojo.
Yeah. Uh, my relationship with my students was actually the hardest part about closing the dojo. Um, Closing the dojo itself was actually fairly easy for me. I came to the conclusion that it's sorry, just a second. So I came to a conclusion that it's the right choice for me, and that was a big part of that was because I didn't see eye to eye with my Aikido instructor anymore. Then also I started to realize that I wanted to find answers which were a lot of them were outside of Aikido. Like I wanted to learn what fighting actually is, what self-defense actually is, and where does Aikido stand in that. There were so many questions I wanted to ask, and I realized I couldn't really ask them as a teacher because I was teaching full time. I was teaching almost every day, and there was not much space and time for me to work on myself. And that was like working on running a dojo is working on yourself, but I didn't have time for a teacher, and I realized I wanted to become a student again. So I made that decision quite easily when the day came. But now the question you asked about my students, I thought because I was losing passion in teaching Aikido at the last months or years, I presume my students will not be shocked that I will decide to close the dojo. I thought they will be like, oh, actually, yeah, that was to be expected. But when I invited my senior students to sit together for a cafe, for coffee the next day after I made the decision myself. And I told them lightheartedly, I was like, you know what? I decided I will close the dojo. And it's my naiveness, my naivete that I did not expect any emotions, but there were tears and people were confused, and I did not expect that for some reason. Now I look back, I realize, okay, it makes sense. But at that moment, it surprised me because I thought it all makes sense, but for them, it was a big surprise. So it was a painful experience, and then I realized I need to talk with them and be there for them. So I did my best. I left all my tatamis for them. I left most of my Aikido equipment. I pretty much gave them everything and helped them find a place and start and continue training Aikido on their own. So I kind of tried to find a middle ground so they wouldn't feel completely abandoned. I never regretted about closing the dojo, but telling that to my students and kind of leaving them without something which turns out was important for them, that was hard. That was a difficult decision. That was a difficult moment.
Well, I can imagine this. It's a shock maybe for some of your students.
Right.
We have two sides: your students, but your followers. I'm sure your followers, this situation with your followers can change radically, and they start to be a haters. Or how was that?
It's a good question. So it was funny to a degree. It was like, I don't know what's there. You have in my native tongue a word where basically it's like funny in a way where you're also crying, funny, sad. So that was kind of that. So the funny part was that because I already was publishing Aikido videos, uh, I had a significant following from the Aikido world before I started questioning Aikido and going on my journey. And I was becoming popular, well known, and I started receiving invitations to teach seminars outside of my country. I taught a seminar in Germany, and then I had an invitation to teach a seminar in France, and I saw more opportunities lining up. But then when I started questioning Aikido publicly and bringing up all those questions, uh, quite quickly the France seminar got canceled, and I didn't receive any more invitations to teach. It's understandable. It's completely understandable. But it was funny because I beforehand I felt like a lot of people admired and liked me in the Aikido community. Afterwards, there were some who still did, but a lot of the Aikido people initially had a strong negative opinion of me. And that was kind of crazy to observe, how quickly things change, but I understand that as well. It was hard for to some degree, and it was a long process. It happened like over 2 years or so, the whole thing. But some people who practice Aikido, not everyone, but some people would be very negative, and they would write negative comments, and they would criticize me. I sometimes would see what they mean. Sometimes I don't think they were entirely correct. But that wasn't a pleasant experience because I think any one of us, if we are criticized more than once, the more times we are criticized, the harder it still gets to us eventually. And so for a moment, I took it personally, and I kind of started firing back at them, and they fired back even harder, and I fired back even harder, and that was a kind of negative period of my martial arts journey. But eventually I realized, you know what, it does make sense. There's no point in this. I realized there's no change in that. Nothing is changing by me being aggressive. And that's where I realized, you know what, some people won't like me. It's natural. It's not a problem. And I started to kind of tone down my aggressiveness and try to become more reasonable, more diplomatic, and it turned out, I think, as a good thing. But yeah, to kind of sum up your the answer to your question, it was interesting to observe how many people changed their opinions, and it was not always easy, but I can understand why that happened.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people feel like you attack the Aikido.
Yes.
And a lot of, so I'm sure so many people lose this perspective about Aikido. Let's talk about after and before. When you was
Sure.
Aikidoka, why you choose Aikido? Why you practice Aikido, and why you start to teach Aikido?
Um, the main story is that I grew up in a city which was a rough city, like violence was common,
Yeah.
and I was never a violent person myself. So when I heard that there's Aikido, which is a martial art which helps you uh, protect yourself and others without inflicting violence or without using aggression, that appealed to me. I liked that idea from the get-go. And also, too, I was interested in Japanese culture, samurai culture, watching anime, and so all of that kind of clicked with Aikido because there were the swords and the samurai culture and the hakama. I just turned 14 when I first tried Aikido, and it kind of drew me in right away. So I also noticed how it helped me. Well, basically, I always wanted to inspire people. I always wanted to make a difference, and personally, I saw how the Aikido I was learning, it kind of gave me more confidence, and I liked the philosophy of Aikido very much. It influenced my mindset. And I decided quite early that I would like to share that with others. I would like to help others experience the same. And I kind of noticed that Aikido at the day could be a powerful tool for me to reach other people, like a dojo at the tatami could be a great place for me to meet people and to talk to them, to inspire them to grow and to search for their answers. And so I decided to become an Aikido instructor mainly for those reasons. Yeah, eventually I was Uchideshi, I became a black belt, and I moved back to Lithuania wanting to make a difference by using Aikido and its philosophy. And so I think that's kind of where I was coming from.
What type of Aikido you was studying? This Aikido from Aikikai?
I ended up being kind of a mix. So the first 4 years I was learning from an Aikido instructor who was part of the Aikikai. So you could say, my style was more or less Aikikai. Then afterwards, my main Aikido instructor, his background was Ivama. He was a direct student of Saito Sensei.
Okay.
But my former teacher, my main Aikido teacher, he made a lot of changes himself. He was focusing a lot on the philosophy of Aikido, and while you could see the Ivama technical background in him, I noticed how he would make the technique softer, and he was exploring connection very much, like feeling the other person, and there was a lot of spirituality as well. And part of the curriculum was also exploring what you could call self-expression, like free movement, using Aikido techniques, which is an uncommon expression of Aikido, an uncommon practice. So that made us a bit kind of different or unusual, the style that I was learning. But the basics were strong. It was Ivama, and we would have a lot of visiting instructors where I was training, and I would go to seminars. So I was learning everything, and I wasn't really tying myself down to one style. but basically my mix was like Aikikai, Iwama, and some heavy investment in like a spiritual side of Aikido.
All right. So you started 40 years,
Yes, 14. Yeah.
14 years, sorry.
Yeah.
And right now, how old are you?
I will be turning 31 in 3 weeks. So I'm now 30, but about to be 31.
Oh, you're young.
Quite young. It's crazy. I'll comment on that. I started learning Aikido when I was 14. At 19, I finished high school and decided to go to pursue becoming an Aikido instructor full-time. I moved to a different country to become Uchideshi. I was Uchideshi for 3 years, full-time training all the time to become an Aikido instructor. And when I was 22, I came back to Lithuania to open my dojo. Now, for me, I had very little life experience, and I thought that what I was doing was normal, was regular. But my students were saying, "Oh, you're so young. It's so unusual. It's so strange. You opened a dojo, and now you're, the sensei." And they were kind of surprised and inspired by that. But I was looking at them and thinking, like, what's the big deal? Now I'm 30, and I'm looking back, or I'm meeting like people who are 22 years old, and I'm, no way. Did I open a dojo when I was 22? This is crazy. I mean, I look at, guys who are 22, I'm like, I was very different than people like that. Of course, I had, I had my young naiveness, and I had a lack of life experience, but also I had a kind of a different mindset, and I invested so much energy into Aikido so early that things happened very early for me. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's not usually. It's 22 years to start a dojo. It's really a big deal. I start to practice at 6, and
nice.
yeah, very young. But I start to teach maybe just 10 years ago. So
Yeah.
you was fast. But
Yeah.
I'm sure about one thing. Aikido, you can learn technique of Aikido in 5 years, no more. You
Right.
need just 5 years, and you can know Aikido completely about technique. But I think the most difficult in Aikido is the philosophy, and really live and integrate the philosophy in your life. This is the most difficult. But it's my perspective.
Yeah, I'd actually like to chip in here, and I like that you're saying that. I'm actually almost surprised. I agree with you, but at the same time, I'm almost surprised you're saying that, because I think not many people say that. But it's my experience as well that techniques. I mean, there's always new techniques and different variations. But if you're training Aikido in a very intensive way, 4 or 5 years or so, most techniques become familiar to you. And I think that's not always acknowledged in Aikido. I think there's an idea that presented that Aikido, you train it forever, and there's always new techniques and this and that. And I personally also don't think that's the point. I think there's more to Aikido than just techniques, and to have a mindset where you're focusing, where you appreciate techniques, you respect the techniques, you learn the techniques, but it's not your entire focus. I think that I like that. I think that's a good approach.
Great. In this situation with MMA.
Right. Well, one of the conclusions I came to while exploring the whole subject was that not as much is based on the martial art as much as it's based on the training methodology, basically how it's trained. And even the same martial art can be trained in different ways. Granted, though, most martial arts have a tendency to be trained in a certain way. And so, for example, with combat sports, MMA, meaning mixed martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, judo, wrestling. A big thing, it's not to say that competition is necessary, but competition sets a tone, sets a direction. Because you know that you will be, if you're going to competition, you know that you will be facing someone who's training the same thing as you do, and they will be giving you 100% of their energy, of whatever they know. And still, of course, there's rules, so it's limited, but you know you're going to face 100% resistance. Like not only 100%, but also trained, experienced resistance. And then that usually inspires those schools to train, preparing for that. So meaning you facilitate, you give your students a chance to experience that before your students go to competition. So you train against each other, really not trying to give each other a chance to win, and so on and so forth. It's a big subject, but that's kind of the direction. Now, if you would take even a combat sport, like such as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I spoke about this idea with some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu experts, if you would take out the competition aspect, and not only competition, but just the live resistance, the training against resistance, and you would train just techniques with a partner who's completely letting you do the techniques, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu would end up being ineffective. It would be exactly the same techniques, but if the partner is not giving you any resistance, he's helping you do the technique, there's something you might be missing. And when somebody will attack you, in reality, that person will give you a lot of resistance. And if the person is not used to that, there's low chance that the person will know what to do in that situation. That's my opinion. But now, the reason I'm saying all of this in regards to Aikido, I think I think what you're pointing to as well, Aikido itself, it's hard to say, it's effective or it's ineffective. A lot is the main question is how it's practiced in that particular dojo. And I agree with you. In many dojos, the way Aikido is trained, it's not preparing a person to meet actual live violence or attack.
Yeah.
And sorry, there's something happening. Anyway, so that it's not trained in that way. And in some countries, there's not even like a really big need to do that. Like mentioned, Japan. I think I would suggest people to learn self-defense. I think it's valuable for everyone. You never know when you will be attacked or if you will be attacked. But some countries, like some Western European countries, Japan, and some other places, violence is so rare that it makes sense that they kind of neglect that aspect. But as you mentioned, like I haven't been to Mexico myself, but I spoke with some people who live in Mexico, and they told me that yes, you see violence often enough, and that makes you ask the question, okay, so will this work? Well, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but these are my thoughts.
Yeah. If you are in situation in a street, you will use Aikido? Of course not.
Yeah.
I never will use Aikido in the streets. Here in Mexico, I had an experience 3 or 4 times with real aggressions, and I never use Aikido. I use dirigío.
Yeah.
It works, but it's very different.
Yeah.
So
there's something I'll quickly add, if you don't mind, to what you said. I like that idea. I like that perspective. And one more way that it could be expressed is that Aikido is more a mindset, which is an idea I like, and I support it on many degrees. That you can train even mixed martial arts and do Aikido to a degree. It's more about where you're coming from, what's your relationship with the other person, what's how you do things and how you think. That's on a big level. That's Aikido. The techniques are just one small expression of Aikido. So I like that approach. And also I presume Bruno Orozco. He's from Mexico as well. But yeah, so I spoke with him and a couple of times, and I liked when he said, he's a self-defense expert, knows these things very well, but he said that most, and I agree with him very much, most of the violence that we experience in our lives, a lot of it comes from being at the wrong place at the wrong time, being with the wrong people. I mean, wrong people, being just spending time in a dangerous place with dangerous people. And if you practice Aikido, usually you start to appreciate and value different things, and you end up, spending time with nice people, with good people, and going to good places. And that's already like makes you 80% safer, just by having that philosophy on. And also, I don't recall Bruno saying that specifically, but I'll just add that by myself as well. There's one self-defense expert calls it the monkey dance. When in the bar, two guys are like, oh, I'm gonna beat you. It's like they're comparing their egos and trying to prove something to each other. And he made a point that most of fighting, especially between guys, it comes from that monkey dance, which is entirely not necessary. You can avoid it if you keep your ego in check. And Aikido, I think, helps you do that, and that can help you avoid so many conflicts if you're not taking part in that aggression. Of course, there's still the self-defense aspect where sometimes you may be attacked and you won't be given a choice. Those are the worst cases, but that's the minority. I think the majority of times is things we can avoid, and by having the right mindset, spending time with the right people, which Aikido promotes, that's one of the best ways for being safe.
Yeah, and it's dangerous. So many teachers, so many senseis teach you will be safe if you practice this way. No, the example with a knife in Aikido, we have just two types of attack or three types of attack. This tsuki are this type of shomen, are this type of yokomen. So in fact, nobody in the real life will attack to you like that or like that with a knife.
Yeah.
So I saw one or two videos of Bruno.
Yeah.
I never speak with him, but I see have very interesting things in his practice. So people will attack like this, so fast, and you will die soon, I'm sure.
Oh yes.
So it's important the teachers and senseis check the reality and teach the correct way to the students. But it's another story. Okay, when you was Aikidoka, your favorite technique?
Oh, interesting question. Let me think. I think I have an answer if we're specifically talking about techniques, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I could even become very specific and say Yokomenuchi Jujinage.
Okay.
And that's because there's a story there. I was preparing for my black belt, and that's the technique I had a difficult time with. I had troubles doing it correctly or doing it in a way where I was happy about it. And I decided to just go nuts with it, to just go crazy, just do the technique again and again and again, just to try to perfect it. And in the end, as an end result, I did it so many times that it started to flow. It started to feel like it really blended well and nicely. And I started to be able to do it with all my training partners. And it just started to feel so nice. But it was also interesting that I basically ended up falling in love with that technique. And the fun part of that is, why I think I like it, is because initially I hated it because it was hard to do. But I did it so many times where it became my favorite, and that made it even more so my favorite because there was that radical change in my relationship with the technique. Kind of as an example that something you hate in the beginning, if you get to know it more, it can become your favorite thing. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Thanks. And what technique you don't like?
I don't like in Aikido?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm seeing two answers. So it depends on how I look, whether, what technique I don't like doing myself, I didn't like doing myself, or a technique I don't like as an idea of the technique. So, okay, first part, it's Koshinagi for me personally.
Yeah.
Because I'm a tall guy. Do you use centimeters or feet? I don't remember.
Centimeters.
Okay, so I'm 191, so 1 meter 91 centimeters. So that's pretty tall.
Yeah.
And a lot of my training partners were way smaller. Some of them are tiny. So imagine me doing Koshinagi. I have to go like so low under them to throw them with my hips, and that was torture. And my knees are bad. I had knee pain. So I was like, I could do it. I learned to do it, but it was like not my favorite technique.
Okay.
And so yeah, and just to entertain myself, I guess the second part of the answer, even like I could say, even like I could stay with Koshinagi even from a different perspective as well, like a technique, not my favorite technique, because it kind of challenges Koshinagi, and there's other techniques too, but it kind of challenges a bit the Aikido philosophy, because it's about being in harmony, and Koshinagi throws the other person potentially on the top of the head. So it can be a bit of a violent technique if the other person doesn't know how to fall. So I'm like, like that's a debate. Like that's a whole question there. So maybe, yeah. But I don't have anything about Koshinagi. I think it's a lovely, brilliant technique and very powerful. So I'm just saying that just because, to answer the question.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next. When you was practice Aikido, when you start with your dojo, you start to have students, what was your perspective in future in this moment?
Oh, can you say that again? I think I understood you, but just one more time.
Yeah. You open your dojo, you start to have students, and sometimes we start to have a dreams. What you was think in this moment?
So initially, when I was training and living in Switzerland as Nuchideshi for 3 years, and then after I came back to Lithuania directly to open my dojo. And I remember as I was coming, I was 22 and very inspired. And there were a lot of things I wanted to change. And when I remember I was riding a bus like for 30 hours from Switzerland to Lithuania, and I was asking myself kind of the same question, like what do I want to do with my dojo? How do I imagine my future? And I remember I had very high hopes and very high ideals, like inspiring young people and finding people, helping and inspiring people to find their purpose and passion, and decreasing bullying, decreasing crime. I was filled with a lot of ideals. And I think especially in the first stages of running the dojo, I was hoping to do that, and I did my best. I had some influence in some of those areas. Like I had a lot of policemen training with me, so I had conversations with them, which were hopefully, influencing them. I was invited to schools to talk to kids, so I did do some of that, not to the degree I wished to. But initially, like in the first stages of running a dojo, I had those dreams of creating a dojo which would be super inspiring and would help people become their best versions of themselves, and just kind of creating a big community and influence inside and outside of the dojo. That was my dream at that day.
Great. Now everything changed. What is your dream right now?
Good question. It's funny you're asking, and it's you just kind of created a nice situation where we can compare the two. And the reason it makes it nice as well, because I think I'm kind of coming back to that same place, to that same dream. Obviously, with a more mature mind, with more life experience, more, hopefully, wisdom, and a bit more realism, a bit of a better understanding of what's possible, what's a bit too much to expect, how to do things, and all of that. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, or a year ago even, I probably would have said something different. But actually, like about 6 months ago, I started to rediscover the same dream that I had in the day when I opened my dojo. I'm not seeing myself as, at the moment, doing it for Aikido. I started looking back at Aikido philosophy and posing some questions and trying to make a positive difference in the Aikido community, slowly, bit by bit. But I'm not seeing myself yet. I don't see myself yet training Aikido or teaching Aikido. But my dreams are similar. I basically would want to inspire people to want to know themselves more, to know themselves better, to inspire people to apply critical thinking, or to ask themselves questions. What do they believe in? If this is useful to me, and so on. And to encourage people to be more open-minded, to not judge, to not have an opinion which is very strict and there's no space for changing. But even if you don't like something, to ask yourself, maybe I'm not understanding something. Maybe there's something more which is there. So I think those are probably my three priorities at the moment, or dreams. And in terms of like 5 years later, I just hope that I will be able to do this. So to touch in a significant amount of people with that idea.
Good. Thank you, Rokas. Okay, let's talk about after. You leave Aikido and you visit Portland in Oregon.
Yes.
And you start to practice with Matt Thornton.
Yes, you're correct.
How was this experience?
It was very, very good. Obviously, there were challenges there, but the main part is I started admiring Matt Thornton before we met. We were in contact over internet, but I really liked his philosophy. He's very much of a critical thinker, very educated. He went for a similar journey like I did in martial arts just years ago, but with Jeet Kune Do. So he knew what I'm going through. And just spending time with him and learning from him and getting to know him, becoming friends basically, I realized that influenced me greatly in a very positive way. It helped me shape into my current version of myself. Training wise, the organization that he created, Straight Bass Gym, I find it to be a very healthy organization. It's very accessible for beginners, very friendly, very well structured. Beginners, for example, there's a very good beginners program, and everyone is encouraged to discover their own way of training, or basically of doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and doing MMA. You're not asked to be a copy of someone else, but you're encouraged to find what works best for you. So yeah, it's very open-minded. There's a lot of great individuals in Straight Bass Gym, like people who are experts in various fields. So that all kind of blended together and turned out to be a very positive experience. Last part of that training, I was training mixed martial arts primarily, also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the side. And I was training in a program which was 5 days per week at 6 in the morning. and I'm not a morning person. I go to sleep very late, so I was lacking in sleep. I was not only training in that session, but I would also go to extra training, and I would sometimes train on Saturday and Sunday. So only later I realized that I did not have enough rest. But for 6 months, I was just training and training and training. So I was pushing myself hard. I learned a lot, but also I think I went a bit too far. But it was, in the end, it was a very good experience, one way or another.
Great. And after you had your first amateur fight, how was that?
Yes. It was crazy in a good way. When I think about it, I like to say that it's such a crazy event because you are literally locking yourself, being locked in a cage, in a literal cage, with another person whose only purpose there, as much as your purpose there, is to injure each other to a degree where one of you will stop, or you will just be, or the judges will decide that you were better at injuring the other person or defeating the other person.
Yeah.
So it's like the opposite of Aikido, almost. There's a lot of noble aspects about that because we're both two people who want to prove to ourselves that we can do this. We're not there actually. There's nothing personal. We're not there. In reality, we're not there. In truth, we're not there to hurt each other. We're there actually to overcome ourselves, because it's such a huge challenge to do that. There's so much adrenaline, and you're going to get punched in the face with everything the other person has, and you're both there to win. It's just so intense, and there's the crowd, hundreds of people shouting and lights and everything. So to put yourself through this, it's quite something, and I'm super happy I did that. I think any person who's considering to do that, I think I would say do it. I wouldn't say everyone has to do it. It's a must, but I think it's a valuable experience where if you overcome it's kind of a way to overcome yourself and to face a huge challenge. And if you do that, then later in life, other things start to seem maybe a bit more simple because you think, oh, I did that, I can do this. So yeah, but basically it was a good experience.
Great. And the most of Aikidokas don't have a strong legs because it's not necessary. So Aikidoka don't know how to kick.
Yes,
That's easy. Don't know
myself.
how to do a
good
good. Yeah. It's not happen. So you start to use your legs. You start to be strong in your legs. You learn to kick. How was this transition? In Aikido, you use your body, but you not use your leg. In fact, to do kicks. So how was this change?
Yeah, it was. You made a good point. It's difficult. It was difficult for me to learn because I was always used to planting my feet, like being full on my feet, kind of feeling a strong connection with the ground. In kicking, you still need to maintain balance, but you also disconnect from the ground, and that was very foreign, very unusual for me. So I think it took a bit longer for me to learn kicking initially than for others. I had to kind of overcome old habits. But I like kicking. I don't think I'm very good at kicking, but I have flexible legs. I can kick. I can make a head kick, and I like to do kicks. Eventually, I learned to like them. But initially, you're correct. It was a challenge to overcome the old habits and to do it. It's people would notice that I struggled with it very much. So, and I think big part of that is because the training was so different before.
Yeah. What's next? You have soon a fight. You think about this?
Initially, a year ago, that was my plan. I was still training full-time mixed martial arts, preparing for my second fight, which is in my bucket list of things to do. still, but I got injured a month before the fight, and basically I had to cancel it. I had to cancel the fight. It was not a pleasant experience because you're putting so much energy into it, and you're waiting for it, and your whole life is about that, and suddenly you learn it's not going to happen. I also think I felt I simultaneously burnt myself out, or in other words, I exhausted myself by training a bit too much. And so I was training, the last training camp I had was in Ireland, in Dublin. And then afterwards I came back to my country, Lithuania. And I asked myself, I started to feel like I'm not being drawn to train martial arts as much as I was before. And I asked myself why, and if I'm not doing martial arts, what else do I want to do? And I realized that's kind of coming back to the question of what's my dream. And so I basically realized that I want to look back at my desire to inspire people not only in martial arts, but also outside of martial arts. So I started a second YouTube channel, which is it's still a kind of a baby channel. I'm still trying different things and seeing what I like to do, what people are interested in, and I'm starting to find some things that are good to explore through that YouTube channel. Part of that is actually exploring Aikido in a positive way. There's some other types of videos as well, but that's a lot of my focus is right now on the new YouTube channel and just creating content outside of martial arts. So my main focus is there now.
Great. Right now, where are you? I'm not sure where I live you right now.
So I'm in my country, Lithuania, which is part of European Union. It's above Poland, below Scandinavian countries, close to Russia. So kind of in the Middle East of Europe, you could say.
Okay.
It's a tiny country.
Okay, I ask because I'm not pretty sure how is the situation. We live a very, very hard situation, global pandemic, this Corona, COVID-19. So this affect to you in your personal life?
Country-wise, we did have a lockdown. We were asked to stay at home. Shops closed and everything. For a moment, it was very, very locked down. But Lithuania did a good job. And now if I'll show you, I'm sitting in the city center, there's people walking and it's like life is going full on. And now from tomorrow, we'll have to wear masks again inside of buildings, but outside not yet. So basically the country did a very good job with COVID-19. And right now, the numbers are very low. So I'm very happy about that because I know that's not like a lot of the other parts of the world. Personally, when the lockdown was there for about 2-3 months, it was complete lockdown. It didn't affect me much because I'm a YouTuber. And my work is on the computer, on the internet, and I just basically continued doing what I do. I also, at the moment, I'm not training martial arts a lot, just once in a while. So even then, that way, the lockdown didn't affect me, because if I would be training martial arts every day and the lockdown would happen, I would be very sad. But at the moment, I wasn't training much anyway. So personally, it didn't affect me that much, which is I'm happy that I can say that. I know that for some people, it was a huge life changer. So.
Oh, you are lucky.
Yes, I think that too. Yes,
no, here it's very hard. We can't practice Aikido. People can't go out. Start to go out to the people, but still it's dangerous. So you are lucky.
Very lucky. Like yesterday, I was in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training. The academy was packed. It was like there was barely space to train, and everyone seems healthy. So I hope we're not making a mistake, because the COVID-19 is still around. But in Lithuania, the numbers are very low at the moment. So I consider myself to be very lucky, for sure. there was a chance that I will be in the States when the lockdown happened. So I'm happy I didn't go there before the lockdown.
Wow, it's hard. So many people start to be crazy in lockdown.
Yeah, no.
Okay, next topic. Let's talk about afraid. When we practice Aikido, it's difficult to feel afraid. Maybe when you will falling or when you start to practice ukemi.
Yep.
But it's in fact it's not dangerous practice Aikido.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are young, you should not feel afraid of about nothing. But
Mm-hmm.
would you start to try with MMA, this real combat? You feel afraid? How do you control this if you feel it?
Yeah. Well, to begin with, I agree with you. There's not much fear in Aikido. Having said that, I do want to kind of make a point as well. I think initially there's some fear because, you know, you don't, like the first classes, you don't know what's happening and everybody knows what they're doing. And some people are afraid to fall, and there's the exams, and the first exams, they're stressful. So there's some fear, especially in the beginning. But when you become comfortable, like you mentioned, like, you know, after 5 years of doing Aikido, you know so much, you know the environment so well that the fear really kind of goes down. And I think that can be said about many things. But even then, the fear level is still pretty low in general because there's some social fear, but you're not afraid to get hurt that much. In mixed martial arts, yes, it's a different story because to begin with, already like the student base is already different. In Aikido, you usually meet very nice people, and actually in MMA, people are very nice as well. I find most of them, but in Aikido, the people look nice. In MMA, the people look scary sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
they're big and muscular and tattoos and or crazy haircuts. Not all of them, but sometimes you're like, oh my God. And the environment is intimidating, and because it's a serious business, because you are going to punch each other in the face and you're going to try to choke each other out. And so it's very focused. And I think Aikido has that quality sometimes too, but then in MMA, the quality of getting hurt, it's much more present. And also too, you're sparring or fighting people who know very well how to fight. All of that it's present. And so for me, training MMA initially was definitely intimidating. Later, I started to get to know the people, especially like in Portland. I got to know the people, and it's a very friendly and fun environment. So I think that decreased. But then I moved to Ireland to train with the professional team of Straight Blast Gym Ireland. That's like UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, and I'm like just a beginner amateur. So I was like at the bottom tier. Everyone was way beyond me, including like world-class fighters. And I was training with them, and man, oh man, that was definitely scary. But then eventually at the end of my training camp, again, I got to know them. I realized I'm safe. They are protecting me. They're respecting me. So the fear wasn't there it wasn't as much as fear as some adrenaline. I would still feel adrenaline going on the mat. I was like, okay, showdown. We're gonna do some sparring now. But eventually get used to it. And I think you just become comfortable at feeling that sense of adrenaline, which is great in my experience, because then you're much less inclined to panic when that happens in the streets. If somebody tries to intimidate you, you remember that you fought people who are world-class fighters and you survived. So this guy on the street, I still have to be cautious, but he doesn't have the same impact that he did on me, before. So there was that difference. I agree.
All right. So you have to learn to control your afraid. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's just you become comfortable with it, because the adrenaline. Most people, it's a wide subject, but most people confuse adrenaline and fear. Because when you're in a dangerous situation, your natural response of your body is adrenaline.
Yeah.
And when you feel adrenaline, many people start to panic and think, "Oh, I'm afraid. That means I cannot do anything." No, it's just adrenaline. But then still, if you're not used to adrenaline dumps, you don't know what to do with it, and you can go wild. But if you're used to being in that state of adrenaline, then when it happens in a really dangerous situation, you're just much more comfortable. And also regarding psychological fear, uh, again, as I said, it's really nice when you know that you can fight with people who can fight. Then when some homeless person in the street is threatening you, there's adrenaline there, but you're not that afraid because you realize, okay, well, it's not like I don't know what to do with you. It's more likely he doesn't know what to do with me. So that helps. Yeah.
Great. You want to talk about people in mixed martial arts looks very
Like I don't even know what words to use myself.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Intimidated. They
intimidating
look
maybe
intimidated.
sometimes. Yeah.
It's my perspective. Please,
Right.
if I'm wrong, please tell me. But I see your videos before with your hakama, your hair, and maybe a little bit different attitude in your face and how you speak. And
Yes.
now you are very different. You have a barb.
Yes.
I think you cut your hair.
Yeah. It's no more ponytail. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure because I don't know, but you right now have you a tattoo in your shoulder?
Yeah, one on my shoulder and one on my ankle on the foot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your attitude and your face is very different, and you talk very different. So the MMA change to you in these all types?
Yeah. To a big degree, yes. One thing is, what's interesting is actually that I already put a tattoo on my shoulder while I was still teaching Aikido, but I guess I was already kind of changing my attitude. One of the reasons why I changed, it was very natural. I never did it, consciously. Like I cut my hair, yes, consciously. It was also getting in my way when I was training mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
And it was also a representation for me that I'm changing my lifestyle, I'm changing my attitude. So that was conscious, but most of the changes, I didn't try to do it. It just happened naturally. Part of that was because I recognized that when I was teaching Aikido, not all of it, but I also took some mannerism from my Aikido and yoga instructors, like how I would express myself, how I would talk. There was certain, like I had an idea that I have to, be the sensei. And sometimes I wasn't forcing it, I wasn't faking it, but I was also conscious to kind of hold myself back a little bit and stay in a more calm place. And when I started doing MMA and I kind of quit Aikido, I was hanging out with people who are very casual. There's a lot of masculine energy there as well. And I kind of started appreciating that. I started to feel comfortable at that, and I felt it took me less effort to be like that. Like beforehand, when I was an Aikido sensei, sometimes I would be an Aikido sensei. Now it's just like, I'm just being myself. And it turned out that, I guess you do become who you spend time with, as the phrase says. And I guess I did take a bit of that culture of mixed martial arts naturally. But most of it was just me allowing myself to be more casual, which MMA culture is very casual. You're very serious on the mat, but no one is asking you to follow any kind of Bushido code or there's no set of virtues or rules. There's some things which everyone respects, but you're not expected to act in any way. And I think in that environment, you just get used to be casual. And at the same time, I appreciate and admire the culture of Aikido. And again, it's different in different places. But to be kind of that stoic and calm and centered person, I think it's great. To learn to do that and to be in an environment where that's the norm, that can give many things to people. But just on my personal journey, again, I think I just learned to be more casual, and it ended up looking more like MMA. But it was never like a conscious effort to look or talk different.
Great. Okay, Rokas, can you send some message in Spanish to people in Mexico and Latin America? You talk a little bit of Spanish?
Actually, unfortunately, no. I speak French. I speak English and Lithuanian, a little bit German, a little bit Russian. Spanish, I always wanted to learn Spanish, and I understand some of it, but I can't really speak it. So I don't know how to do this. Is there still a way to do it?
Okay, I will help to you. Some
Yes,
easy. Hola, it's hello.
Hola. Yeah.
Hola, amigos.
Hola, amigos.
Amigos, it's some like friends.
Right.
Then you can say your name. Soy. I am.
Okay, soy Rokas.
Hola amigos, soy Rokas.
Okay, I think I can get that. So, hola amigos, soy Rokas.
Okay. And the last you can say saludos a México.
Okay, saludos a México. Okay, so let me see if I got this. So,
hola amigos.
Okay, hola amigos, soy Rokas. Saludos a México.
Yeah.
Hey, I got this.
Great.
I should have learned Spanish. Actually, it seems my intuition was correct.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Nice.
I love hear Spanish from
nice
people. Yeah. It's some like I don't know. I don't know how to explain. Rokas, we talk maybe 1 hour with 30 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you accept this interview, this chat. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm sure it's not important my words and my perspective because it's your life, but I think you did the correct thing. I think you did the best for you. So congratulations, because you need to be a very brave and you need to be a very strong guy for do all this.
Nice.
Did all this, and I hope you can do all your you can get all your dreams. And thank you very much, because now we are friends in Facebook, so we can talk later.
Sure. Yeah, and I also wanted to use the chance and say a couple of last final words, and to just say thank you as well for inviting me. I'm actually very happy to hear that your plan is to translate this to Spanish, because that's I sometimes forget, and it's a stupid thing of me, but I forget that not everyone speaks English. It's natural, it's normal, but I'm so used to speaking English that it seems like, oh, everybody knows English, but that's not the fact. That's not the case. And since I published so many videos on YouTube, sometimes it feels to me like, oh, everybody saw it. But no, that's not reality, because some people can't even watch it because it's in English. So for me to know that, we have this talk and it'll be translated in Spanish, that it will reach people who speak in Spanish, and hopefully, this will be interesting and valuable to those people. I'm very happy about that. Also, thank you for your questions. There were some great questions. Definitely made me think sometimes. And and sorry to hear that right now Aikido, there's no practicing Aikido in the dojo, but I hope the situation gets better soon, and things will continue moving on. So yeah.
Bien, ¿qué te pareció? Creo que hay muchas cosas bien interesantes que nos puede ofrecer esta charla, muchas cosas que Rokas vivió y que tuvo que tomar decisiones. A mí me parece bastante honesto lo que él está haciendo, bastante interesante del cómo lo está haciendo y bueno, tú puedes tomar y hacer tus propias conclusiones. Yo lo que trato de hacer es traerte información, darte perspectiva y poco a poco ir incrementando nuestro conocimiento del Aikido y del arte marcial. Entonces, pues ahí está, muchas gracias por ver. Si te gustó, pues haznoslo saber también. Suscríbete, dale like. No estamos aquí por otra cosa más que para compartir información, para compartir con todos ustedes. Si quieres que yo entreviste a alguien, a tu instructor, a tu amigo que es un buenazo para las artes marciales, házmelo saber y con mucho gusto yo me pongo en contacto con ellos para ver si podemos charlar y hacer muchísimas, pero muchísimas más pláticas que sean nutritivas para nuestro conocimiento del arte marcial y del Aikido. Gracias por ver, cuídense mucho, saludos, nos vemos en la próxima.